Hi again, everybody. This video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous, and here's his story. Hello, Ollie. I would still like to remain anonymous. I'm the guy with the psycho ex-girlfriend boss. I, too, am a casualty of domestic violence from my dad, whom was an overt narcissist. My mom married my dad when she was very young, just to get out of her parents' house, whom I believe were also narcissists. My dad one time kicked my mom down the basement stairs of my grandparents' house while she was pregnant with me, hoping she would miscarry me, but she instead landed on her butt. My parents rented a room in someone's house prior to buying our own home. We had an electric fan that my dad had made with a washing machine motor and no guard on it. I was very sickly with asthma because my grandparents put my parents out of their house, and my mom was in and out of the cold with me. Once we got our home, things gradually began to unravel. My parents often fought. My dad outweighed my mom by 100 pounds, but she was a very hard nut to crack. Their fighting, nonetheless, was very traumatizing, and I was really scared he was going to kill her. My dad would either call me a little bastard or a little motherfucker. We had some good days, but there was always a guarantee that the other shoe would drop. The calm before the storm. My mom told me stories, and I remember things too. One fight, me just being an infant, my dad wanted to take me to a tavern and put me on the bar naked. He said that his dad did it to him. He said that was his family tradition. Our car was an everyday driver hot rod. His seat was the only one bolted down. The passenger seat was a kitchen chair which my mom sat in and got thrown down whenever he hit the brakes. He laughed heartedly at her. Well, what is your dad's fucking stuntman Mike? Holy shit. There was no back seat, just a rear floorboard with a big square hole when I was a toddler then. He tried to beat up my mom on several occasions to take her money. She had asthma medication. She had for my asthma medication so he could buy beer. Or if she asked him for money, he would throw it on the floor like she was a dog. My dad didn't seem like a father, but more like another kid I was in competition with. My mom would make us both dinner. When my mom went to do her housework, my dad would take my food and put it on his plate. Now that I think about it, that made me feel like I was nothing, like I didn't deserve it. Even when I was eating, as soon as she turned her back, he'd snatch my plate away and put all my food on his plate. He'd done that to the point where I started to lose weight. My mom wondered why until she caught in the very act and took the plate full of food and smashed it in the middle of the floor. And she fed me personally after that. I forgot to mention how he also used to scream at my mom all the time. Put that little motherfucker up for adoption. I never felt safe around him. It was like a countdown. You mentioned in one of your videos traumatizing. It was when the daddy came in front of his children in his underwear. Our house, our house, two-bedroom with a walkthrough between my parents' room and mine. My dad would come into my room at 1 or 2 in the morning and tickle me while either laughing or wickedly making demonic growling sounds in my pitch dark room. He did this every other night. That was nightmare fuel on steroids. I kept having nightmares from that until I was 8 or 9. One really epic time was when my dad came home and I was glad to see him. I was maybe 3 and a half at the time. I ran to him to try to hug him. I was maybe his knee height. I grabbed his legs to give him a loving hug, and he hauled off and kicked the shit out of me from this, and I had a busted lip, a busted nose, and that kick also hurt my solar plexus, my groin, and my genitals. That hurt me physically, but much worse emotionally. As I said to myself that day, if I ever have kids, I will never do this to them. and I lost everything for him also, and I started to hate him. My mom screamed, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And she jumped on him. I lost everything for him and just stayed out of his way. And another time, me and my mom was just sitting in the living room. He pulled out his gun and shot at us. My mom was going to try to leave. My dad said, "You can leave, but you're not going to take him anywhere and you'll never see him again." The next thing I remember, my dad was gunned down. A week after my 5th birthday. No one told me, but I still knew it anyway. And I felt nothing except being a little glad about it. And this was part of my childhood. My dad bullied people. All his misdeeds had just caught up with him. I was a mess after all this. I was really damaged, but that will be a story for another time. I've been through much in my life. I have enough material here to write a best-selling novel. This was my life in the 60s. Oh, the term for my dad is violent, overt narcissist. I was messed up to the point where I had to go to the hospital, had to go to special schools and see psychiatrists. I believe I was a borderline psychotic and I was heavily plagued with learning disabilities. I was nervous and I was hyperactive with ADHD. I was hyperactive ADHD all the way until my gallbladder surgery. I think this is what attracted my narc boss plenty of supply to hijack. What inspired this story was your video. The only thing you should do in the memory of the narcissist is tell the truth. I have enough stories of my own to keep you busy. If you're interested, and may God bless your family situation because you have a good, honest heart to help others, I'm going to send you another small donation after I send the story. And please, are you a George Carlin fan? He was too brutally honest. He didn't pull any punches. I love George Carlin from the time I was a kid. I've always kind of related to stand-up comedy ever since I was a kid. And I think a lot of stand-ups come from a narcissistic abuse background. That's what makes them funny, and that's what makes them be able to tell the truth. So yes, I love George Carlin. I don't agree with it. I didn't agree with him on every little thing, but like for the most part, whether you agree with him or not, it was funny and he was brilliant, and you could always see where he was coming from. So yeah, I love George Carlin. But your story is particularly good, and let me tell you why. For the purposes of helping people, because soon as you brought up the car and the seats and like the image of Stuntman Mike, Kurt Russell in in um, in that Quentin Tarantino movie, the double feature, um, what was it, Death something? Oh, I can't remember the name of the movie. The one was a zombie movie, and the other one was shit, it's gonna pop in later. That's something with the car. Stuntman Mike. That was his car. He enjoyed on it. He tortured people. He wanted to see them hurt. He wanted to see them killed. But what happens eventually to the violent narcissist? The out of control violent narcissist eventually meets their maker. Eventually, somebody's going to put them out or put them down when they're that overtly violent. He met his match. But it's curious, well, not even curious, but it's obvious to see how you ended up with the boss you did. Because men, it seems like, have been abusing you from your father. This started with your father. So you're more apt to take bullshit off a guy, and that type of guy is more apt to see you for a victim and being able to take it. This has all been set in place by your father. Your father was a sadistic, violent narcissist who got off on hurting people. And he kind of made no bones about it, did he? Made no bones about it. Death Proof, that was the movie. Death Proof, in the Death Proof car. And what happened to Stuntman Mike in the end? Well, he met a match he couldn't meet. He went up against three women who owned him in the end. And that's what happened to your dad. Your dad was basically Stuntman Mike. Great character for a movie. And the thinking that goes behind a character like that, the sadistic, being sadistic, and the viciousness, and that gets out of control for the narcissist sometimes. With narcissists like your father, it gets out of control, and he finally met his match. What you were left with were the after effects of your childhood with this idiot. What is the lesson here for you when dealing with these people? When did things sort of get better for you? When your mother caught him, when your mother fed you, when somebody fought him off. When your father went up against somebody and he met his match. Now, I'm not saying get physically violent or shoot anybody or anything like that. I'm not. But with this type of narcissist, as far as your life goes, you need to push back when this happens. Because that was the only way you were able to survive, was somebody fighting for you or somebody stepping up for you, your mother. I really wish your mother could have gotten out of there, but young, 60s, different time, the guy's firing guns off. There really are no domestic violence laws in the 60s to speak of. So I get it. You are prone to the type of narcissist that'll absolutely destroy your life because of your father. But remember the lessons, the hidden lessons that are in there. That when somebody pushed back, it didn't stop until somebody pushed back. Physically, verbally, with a gun. Now, you never want to get physical or use a gun, ever, 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 and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, look at it as an example of just pushing back. Use that as an example when you're dealing with this push back, because he keeps doing it because you take it. But ultimately, your type of narcissist will eventually get what's coming to them because they cannot control themselves. And from what I remember about the story of your boss, people already seem to know about him. He will eventually run into his buzzsaw. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go no contact and try to get away from him in the meantime. But take heart. Eventually, this type of narcissist will meet their match, because their need to be sadistic overrides everything else. So I'm sorry you were raised by Stuntman Mike. He was an asshole, clearly, but much like Stuntman Mike in the movie, your father had caught up to him. So thank you again for your contribution and your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any comments or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you know what to do with the email and my PayPal links in the description box. I'll have the video right back to you. This is Ollie Matthews. Thanks for watching. See you all again soon.